Hello, and welcome, scientists, to Ms. Sessa's virtual classroom. We're going to try something a little bit different today. I'm going to go through some slides, and we're going to do some vocabulary. But I want you to act as if this is actually our classroom. So I want you to actually do everything in your notebook and to take notes and to really think it through and not just wait for my answers. Obviously, you can definitely wait for my answers, but then you're being very inactive and you won't learn as much. So the more active you are in your learning, the more sense it will make and you'll understand it better. So that's really why I want you to actually do it rather than just going through the motions. So right now we have a warm-up. I have a picture up here for you. And I'd like you to pause this screencast so that you can write down a few things you notice about this picture. What do you think it's a picture of? Do you know what it is? Whatever that might be. Right now, pause this video and take a few minutes to write down things you notice. If you haven't paused it, make sure you pause it. Thanks. Okay, so hopefully you've written down a few things. Obviously, I can't call on anyone about things that you've noticed, but hopefully you've said something like, oh, these are chromosomes. Okay, so we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. You can see here we have these little black stripes, black and white stripes here. All of those are genes. So we talked about those when we talked about the lactase gene, and we're going to talk about specifically what a gene is today. You might have also noticed that they go from biggest all the way to smallest down here. Okay? They're about the same size. They're about the same in color, right? The black stripes kind of line up. And then here, right, it's telling us which sex this is. So here, it's actually a human chromosomes. And here, it's a male. So I'm saying sex, not gender. So I want us to really be aware of that. So again, here we have 23 sets of chromosomes. And here we have, this is called a karyotype. And I don't think I have that spelled anywhere, so maybe I should spell that out. But here, if we go to the next slide, okay, I'll write it down here. Here's a karyotype. Okay. That's how you spell it. Oh, that's how you spell it. Okay. And that's just showing us all the chromosomes in, it could be a human, it could be anyone, so an animal. But so here we do have a human. And here's some more vocabulary. And this will be very helpful for you when you get to your project when we talk about genetic conditions and genetic diseases. So all of these chromosomes here, 1 to 22, they're called autosomes. Okay, kind of sounds like Transformers, but that's just what they're called. They can be anything. Could be your hair color, could be how tall you are, it could be if you have lactase or not, whatever. And then these are called sex chromosomes, right? We have an X, we have a Y, or if you are a female, it's XX. Again, sex, not gender. So moving on, we're going to get to some vocabulary. And once again, I want you to pause this and do some research, right? Being active with this note-taking is going to help you remember it more rather than if you just take my definitions. So I want you to divide a page in your notebook into quadrants. And originally, this would have been done as a group, but you guys can do this by yourself. And these words sort of go together. So gene and allele can be in one quadrant. Dominant and recessive can be in another quadrant. Phenotype and genotype in another quadrant. And then homozygous and heterozygous in another quadrant. So again, pause this video right now. Take some time to do some research so that you get this into your brain. You're being an active listener, an active participant, and then we're going to discuss what each of these things mean. Okay? Once we discuss what these things mean, we're then going to apply it to Punnett Squares, but that's going to be a separate video afterwards. Okay, so again, pause this video right now, take some time to research these 8 words. Okay, I hope you paused it, and now we're going to move on. So the first 2 words together are gene and allele. Okay, I like to think of gene as the general trait. So here, the gene could be for hair color. The allele is the specific characteristic. So it would be brown or blonde or red or black or whatever hair color you have. It's the specific characteristic. So the gene is the general trait, allele, the specific characteristic. On your chromosomes, you have genes, right? They code for something. Your gene could be the lactase gene. Your allele will be whether or not you have that lactase gene to make it. Here we're saying the gene for fur length. However, the allele might be short hair or long hair, like in cats and dogs or whatever. Okay, same thing here. Gene for coat color, but allele, one specific characteristic would be black fur, the other one would be white fur. So those are 2 very important things to sort of understand. And this is also when we're talking about homologous chromosomes, right? These alleles could be different, but the gene is the same, okay? Right, so they code for the same thing in terms of hair length, but they might be different things, so short hair versus long hair. I know it can be kind of confusing, so that's why I want you to make sure you write these down in your notebook, because we will be referring back to them a lot for Punnett Squares and sort of going forward. All right, the next 2 words were genotype and phenotype. I'm going to start with phenotype. Phenotype is your physical appearance, right? So here it's coding for a bug. For example, it might code for your hair color. So your phenotype is that you are a blonde or a redhead or have black hair or have brown hair. It's your physical appearance. It's what we see on the outside. Genotype, however, are your genes. And we use specific examples for this, depending on what the gene is. A lot of times it's just the letters. We're talking about the letters which stand for the genes. And again, we'll get back to that in a second. So if I ask you to tell me the genotype, I want you to tell me the gene letters. If I ask for the phenotype, I want you to tell me the physical appearance, okay? So gene letters versus physical appearance. The next 2 ones, the vocabulary terms, are homozygous and heterozygous. So hetero means different. So here we have 2 different alleles. Remember, alleles are the specific characteristic. So let's say our gene is eye color. Here, if you're heterozygous, you have different genes. You have 1 gene for brown eyes and 1 gene for blue eyes. You have 2 different alleles for whatever gene it is. Okay, the gene is eye color, but you have 1 brown eye allele and 1 blue eye allele. Homozygous, homo means same. You have 2 of the same alleles. So here, this person is homozygous for brown eyes. Here, this person is homozygous for blue eyes, okay? And you can tell this because we have a capital letter and a lowercase letter, and that's what we're going to get to next. But basically, heterozygous means different, 2 different alleles. Homozygous means you have the same allele. It's the same letters for your genotype. Remember, genotype are the genes, which stand for the letters. Again, you need to refer back to your notes for all of this stuff upcoming, okay? Now, the last 2 things are probably the most important. So this is dominant and recessive. We're starting to talk about traits. We're talking about genetics. We're talking about what we look like, what our genes are, and if they match, what does that look like? So if we say someone has a dominant trait, we say that all you need is one of those genes in order for it to be expressed physically on the outside. If this trait is dominant, when there are two different alleles, right, if they're heterozygous, there's two different alleles, the dominant trait is the one that's going to be expressed on the outside. So we're saying brown eyes are dominant to blue eyes. Recessive traits are only expressed, right, physically expressed, if it has two of the same alleles. We always have dominant be an uppercase letter. I would write that down somewhere. So dominant traits always have uppercase letters. Recessive traits always have lowercase letters. That's why we have brown is dominant here, big B, big B. Recessive blue is little b, little b. Here, the child got one allele from dad, one allele from mom to be big B, little b. So their genotype is big B, little b. Their phenotype, their physical trait, is brown eyes. They still have the allele for blue eyes, but it's hidden, right? Blue is recessive, so it needs two alleles to be expressed, right? It would have to be little b, little b. But because brown eyes are dominant, here we have one big B that's dominant. That's what's going to be expressed on the outside physically for the phenotype, okay? So those are the things that I want you to know. I want you to know all of that vocab. You need to get it in your notebook somewhere. You can replay this video. I can also maybe link a few other videos if this wasn't clear enough for you as well. But now what I want us to do is we're going to do some Punnett squares, okay? And a Punnett square is just how to determine the genes, the genotype and phenotype of offspring. Okay, we call the offspring the F1 generation. So we take the mom's genes and the dad's genes, and we do a Punnett square to see what % chance would the offspring have for a specific trait. That's going to be a different video, though, because I'm going to do it on my whiteboard so that you can sort of see it out that way. If you have any questions, this is what Tuesday is for, to come in and ask me any questions about this that we've just gone over. All right, thanks. And stay tuned for the next video, or you can just click on.